Alright, a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, once again from the flight deck. It's Captain Nabs here with you once again, and as you can see, we are sitting here with our Airbus A330 in Amsterdam, getting ready for a trip back across the pond, heading for Toronto. We're just doing a continuation, basically, of our turn from our last flight. Previously we were doing flight 360, and today we're doing flight 361. Here it is again, pretty straightforward. Amsterdam back to Toronto. Nothing too crazy about it. 3,200 miles in front of us, though. So we got to get this flight going before it gets too late. One thing we'll notice about today's flight is it is a little bit further north than the previous version. If I can find my flight plan here really quick. There it is. And what I can show you here down at the bottom with all the maps is that compared to where we were last time, we are going a lot further north across the Atlantic than before. There we go. So if I just scroll down just a little further there, we're going a fair bit more further north. As you can see, the winds are down here in the south, so we've opted to take this more northerly route, which will keep us out of the winds, keep the headwind to a minimum, and thus hopefully get us back that much sooner. But it's going to be a long flight regardless of how we do it, without any wind to help us and a bit of a headwind the whole way. We're going to have a pretty long flight today, so let's go ahead and hop in that flight deck and let's get started. And once again, I am not going to be using FS2 crew for this one. Again, I'm still a little concerned about the reliability of this airplane operating. So we're going to make sure that it's going to be reliable by using using myself as the FO, I guess, if you will. No FS2 crew today, unfortunately. This is not anything directed on FS2 crew per se, but just that this airplane has been such a memory hog for me as I've tried to operate it, that I want to keep it away. I want to do everything I can, try and keep the essential, what I consider essential, things like weather, decent scenery, available. So FS2 crew was one of the things I said, as much as I really like it, I can definitely do the flight without it, especially in this airplane. The Airbus is a relatively simple airplane to operate from a pilot's perspective. It's not simple because there's so much going on behind the scenes, but relatively simple to operate from a pilot's perspective. One pilot can do a lot of the work very easily. So just doing the initial cockpit preliminary setup here, and before I do too much else here, really, I'm just going to flick on these two radios, and we're going to go ahead and get this airplane getting serviced and ready. So we're going to request refueling, and we're going to request some catering services. And then now that we've done that, we're going to very quickly look in our flight plan here again. It's just a little bit too tall for me. There you go, it's a little better. And start finding some important information like how much fuel do we need? Well, we need more to go back than we need to get here because, of course, we got a higher, we got less of a tailwind anyway. So 55 on the fuel. And let's just check what the load is here as well. So SimBrief automatically generated me a flight plan. Sometimes it goes over. I have to really reset the seating limit on this airplane at some point. So we'll do 283. And we'll do 3.6 tons of cargo, because it always goes very low on the cargo. One thing I don't know, and I have to sort of ask different developers what they think about this, but whether or not, when you program in the number of passengers, now does this include a baggage weight for those passengers? Is this cargo above and beyond the baggage weight, or is this all the weight in the cargo hold and it should include any baggage? Not that a lot of people are checking bags anymore in this day and age, but I'm curious. I always kind of consider that, yes, it does not include passenger baggage, in which case, yes, you've got to add a good ton of passenger bags if you've got 200 and something people on board. But I'm not sure. That's the assumption I operate under. I could be wrong. All right. So let's go ahead and get this going here. Alright, just checking to make sure that there's nothing happening in my chat window there, because my chat window inadvertently closed on my other device that I use to monitor it here. Alright. And we can go ahead and get ready here. So I'm also going to call these guys to start boarding. Pretty sure the bridge was attached. Yes, the bridge looks like it was attached. 283 people. And hopefully you should be able to hear things very soon here. And now my other device is working there. Okay. Alright, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so the most important thing now, of course, is to start working on the FMS. So we'll pull that up here in the corner as always. And as always for me, I'm going to have FMS in my corner here. Let me just quickly make sure it's up there. There we go. Alright, and there's the FMS ready to go. Select FMS mode, and we can start initializing the flight. So again, this is Amsterdam EHAM to Toronto. And the flight plan is all there. I'm going to put it all in because I want to go through it as I do it here. The alternate today is to go to Ottawa. The only trouble with touchscreen sometimes is not having actual buttons. And this is one thing I despise about touchscreens, is if you're not like head-on, it's very easy to press the wrong button. This is better than the alternative of using the mouse to simulate the FMS. But touchscreens, one of the banes of modern existence. Really and truly. And I don't understand why. Sometimes why people are so fascinated with touchscreens in every aspect of their lives. Touchscreens, yes, they have certain very useful applications. They absolutely do, and I won't argue that fact. But some people, I hate to say use them as a crutch, but seem to expect what am I trying to say? Expect them everywhere, including places where they hinder you rather than help you as you're going. Places where buttons do the job. I dread the day when people say, "Oh, let's put touchscreens in aircraft." There's going to be a terrible day. So it's hard enough to use a touchscreen in a stable environment. Take a moving environment like an airplane, where you have turbulent days and people are going to be mashing the wrong point on the screen. Like, it's very easy. It's much easier to hit a button correctly in turbulence than it is to hit a particular spot on a screen. Useful technology, but within certain limitations. It's not the solution to all of technology's problems. Like, some people seem to think everything should have a touchscreen on it. Some things don't need a touchscreen at the end of the day. Sorry, I'll try to stop ranting about that, but it's one of those things that bugs me. Lots of useful uses for a touchscreen, but in no way do they replace a decent keyboard too. Alright, so we're due in departure today. We do have a ground controller up. I don't know what he's going to give us, so I'm just going to... yeah, we'll go with what's planned there. Where's my sim brief weather? Hold on. Not my sim brief weather, sorry, my V-pilot weather. Winds 2, yeah, okay, we'll do 24. That's a popular departure runway, so we'll see what they say. And so the departure is the Bergie 1 Sierra, or whatever Bergie comes off of. Oh, there it is. Almost went by me there. Bergie 1 Sierra, and that should take us as far as Bergie. Yes, and then we can start doing a whole bunch of airways to get us the next couple of legs here. So L602, L46, so L602. Gonna try using the shortcut. L46 and Nalex it is. November 110, L602 again. Oh, see, and I worry about that. I wonder if they're co-located airways, so I'm going to specify here. It's an odd way to format it. Yeah. Anyways, well, when I see the same airway in there multiple times, it kind of makes me a little bit worried that something's going to jump to a conclusion. Urquhart, good. TLA. And I assume you guys can hear the ATC there. I guess my Nope, that's, sorry, that's Unicom actually. I thought maybe I was still tuned to ground, but nope, that's Unicom. Okay, so that's everything as far as airways go, and then after TLA we've got a couple of directs. AMLAD SUNOT. And then today we're actually flying an actual NAT Track. The NAT Track today is quite far north for the westbound track, and it works for us because the two airports that we're visiting are relatively north in Europe and North America, being Amsterdam being kind of still northern Europe, not totally northern Europe, but definitely northern half of Europe, and of course Toronto being very much northern part of North America, certainly relative to all the other major airports, American cities out there. So NAT Alpha, so after SUNOT, we could go to our flight plan route. We should also have in here our track message. Westbound track, there it is. So after SUNOT, it's 5820 north, so I don't know if you guys can see this, but right here, it's got the actual NAT track message. 5820 north. Making it almost easier to read. 5830 north. 5840, 5750, 5840 north. And then 5740 north. And no, 5750. 5750 north. There we go. 5750 north, and then ending at today. The fix called Hoist. 55 north, 57 west. That all makes sense. And then we can go back up to our main flight plan here. After NAT Alpha, it's going to be November 600 Alpha to Baie-Comeau. So we put in November 600 Alpha to Baie-Comeau, and then after that do we have another one? Yes, so we can put Jet 555 to Milan to Cebu, and then Jet 553, Jet 553, and there's Cebu, and then we're going to go Dyson Q848, Q848, Dyson, all the way to Letak, and that's where our arrival starts. Actually making use of the jetways in North America for once. North America tends to avoid them a lot. Alright, so then Toronto, 15 left, not very bloody likely. I'm just going to put, let's see here, I'm going to put 2-3. It's really just a ballpark guess. I could go look at the weather and that would tell me better, but I'm not even going to really worry about it at this point. It's 7 hours from now. We'll have lots of time to reprogram our arrival if we need to. Alright, so there is the arrival. So that's it for the flight plan. Page 2 of the init. And it looks like our fuel truck arrived. I don't know if you guys can see it down here in the corner, but we do have fuel flowing into the airplane. And it does say refuel in progress on our ECAM as well. So let's just have a look here. So our load today, 154.7 and 26. And these guys are supposed to be filling the airplane to 55. So we'll put 55 for the block fuel. And last but not least, performance. We're just going to do a flap 1. We got long runways here in Amsterdam. Why not? Let's do flap 1. 144, 144, 151. The higher flap settings are better for shorter runways, but they create a little bit more drag once you get airborne, so they're not as efficient. You want to choose the lowest flap setting. That will get you safely off the ground. Okay, that's it for the FMS setup, so I'm going to go ahead and close this down here. And I can close... Nope, come on. Close those down as well. And I can finish up with the rest of my flight deck setup. And what we're going to do here... we should have... there it is. EHAM. We're going to pull up the charts now and just make sure that our guidance panel is set correctly. Oops. Come on. Sometimes that keyboard is a little bit of a pain to bring up. It works quite well once you get it up, but it just takes a few minutes to bring it up here. Alright, so there we go. So, Amsterdam. Oh! I had no idea you could do that. Look at that. If you grab that line, you can actually move this back and forth. Holy crow. Learning new stuff every day here, guys. What I'm really trying to do is just grab the stupid nutty scroll bar here and just scroll right down. There we go. Bergie. Alright, I'm going to add that one to my knee board. And that's really all I need right now. And I think before I do this, let's go ahead and go night mode on here. I think before I go any further, let's go ahead and call up ground. I believe we have a ground controller on here in Amsterdam today. We do, 21.8. Get a clearance, and then we can do one setup and one briefing that is all correct. So let's go ahead and do that.
Amsterdam traffic and...
Nope, that's not 21, that's 20.
Approach for runway 18 center.
There we go. Probably going to need something to write on. And a pen. I had like 3 pens down here and I have no idea what happened to any of them. There we go. Amsterdam ground, good morning. It's Transat 361, stand Foxtrot 6, A330 heavy IFR to Toronto.
Air Transat 361, hello. You are clear to Toronto via the Bergie 1 Sierra departure, runway 24. Initial climb, flight level 60, squawk 2111.
Okay, Transat 361 is cleared to Toronto via the Bergie 1 Sierra departure off of runway 24. Initial climb, flight level 60 and squawk 2111.
Air Transat 361, repeat correct, report fully ready.
Will report ready, Transat 361, thank you. Okay, so that was pretty much as planned. So we've got Toronto via the Bergie 1 Sierra. Let's just verify that that is what we have in here before I go any further. So we can just click on this and it will show us departure. So we are Bergie 1 Sierra, runway 24. That's all good. And before I forget, let's also get that transponder code going in there.
And Skipple ground KLM 48 heavy, just clarifying it's Bravo, not Alpha, correct?
Alright, so 2111. One thing about this, I'm just noticing is that I think we're boarding passengers, but it's really quiet. I haven't heard... I hear the fuel flowing, but I just don't hear the GSX passenger sound effects here. Which sometimes they just don't kick in properly, and I don't know why. I can never quite figure out why they kick in sometimes and not other times. But I do hear the external sounds here. I hear the fuel flowing, and that's probably the biggest external sound. I see the baggage loading here, and I hear the beeping there. It's weird that inside we're not getting the people. Anyways, not going to worry too much about it. Let's see here. Okay, sorry, where was I? I was just distracted by my chat window again. I'm always checking my chat window to just make sure everything's working properly. Okay, so let's go ahead and set this up anyway. So we got 1015 on the altimeter today in Amsterdam. 1015. Alright, our initial climb was to 6,000. It's going to be on the SID, so we're going to be managed speed, managed lateral tracks, and managed climb. Auto thrust is on there, and That's it. Guidance panel is basically all set up. We're going to have the auto brakes up on max. Everything's up. Everything's looking hunky-dory. I'd say we're just about ready to go. See, the speed brake lever's not in the right spot there, but that's okay. Alright. And I think that's about it. We just got to wait for the fuel to load. We still got another 15 tons of fuel to load, so this might take another couple of minutes. Meanwhile, baggage is pretty much done being loaded. One thing they have done a nice job with FSX is these custom views here. Baggage loader rear. If you don't mind the clipping there over the fuel truck, that's quite nice. You could also do it. I don't think you guys are seeing too much of that clipping. A little bit. You can also do. Let's see here, baggage loader. If you do it from the left side there, now you can see it from the tail of the airplane. You can see very nicely there the level of detail, again, with GSX, the level of detail that these guys have gone into in creating these models, these animations too, that look really good, really smooth. You know, it looks like everything is an independent object. It looks like those cartons are independent objects that never really are never really part of anything. They just slowly slide off and move around. Really is quite phenomenal the way GSX has accomplished that. That's one thing where I'll say this, I never regretted for a minute the money spent on GSX, I don't think. It is a little finicky sometimes. Occasionally things will happen in not quite the right order and something will get a little out of whack, and like I said, like certain audio things will not work, or it'll decide it doesn't want to load anything at the gate. But overall, it's an extremely useful system. The pushback features are super nice, and even without that, it is just so well done overall as a product when you start looking at it. And that's the nice thing, is you can let it just do its thing and you don't have to pay attention to it, but then when you come back to it, it's slowly doing its thing. And just to see the loading, it gives you a sense that you're actually doing something. It really does. You actually see the people and the baggage board up onto your airplane. You really get more of a sense that, oh, something's actually happening here. So we just got to wait for this fueling to finish. Once we get to do that, we can start the APU, and then we're ready to get underway here. In the meantime, we can try and have a look around this airport a bit more, because it is just a beautiful airport. One thing we can do is we can sneak around and just watch other people here, if there's anybody else on the ground here. There we go. And now you get a little airborne view, and you can actually see like how many airplanes there are here on the ground in Amsterdam. So got 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like a Cargo Lux over there, just in this view alone. And this is pretty close to where we are. I believe this is the Foxtrot concourse. No, this is Echo. Foxtrot is right behind us, so if we were to turn around, we would see our airplane at the next concourse there. There it is. Somebody departing. Like, Amsterdam is one of those airports where it's really quite busy almost all the time on the network. There's a few major hubs around the world. Well, there's more than a few, but there's quite a few major hubs. Amsterdam is one of them on the VATSIM network that it is constantly seeing a high level of traffic all throughout the day, and it almost needs controllers online more than they are. When the controllers are here, they are really good. I just feel like there's just not enough of them here in Amsterdam. There's so much traffic always coming and going. The other thing we can do is just try to scroll around and have a look at the various gates. If I can find, what am I looking for? There it is. I can't because I haven't actually scanned it yet since I reinstalled the sim. So let's
People ground, hello, enter 54 Tango Charlie, runway 18 center is vacated and request to stand Echo 4.
Enter 54 Tango Charlie, welcome to Amsterdam. Echo 4 is occupied, taxi stands Delta 54 via Quebec, Bravo and Alpha Niner.
In this case, can we take Cent Echo 6 or something?
Enter 54 Tango Charlie, you can taxi Echo 10.
Okay, we can take Echo 10, enter 54 Tango Charlie.
kind of fun to just sneak around and watch what other people are doing here.
And the new taxi clearance will then will be Quebec, Bravo and Alpha 10.
Quebec, Bravo, Alpha 10, enter 5 for Tango Charlie, thanks.
Alright, in the meantime, let's hop on our flight deck and see how we're doing here. Oh, the fueling is almost done there. He's a quick fueler. Normally, you would probably have this airplane half loaded before you'd even show up in the flight deck. I guess the one thing we didn't actually do is we didn't actually do the departure day, the takeoff briefing. So let's do that right now. Let me just remove that. Okay, so it is Bergman 1 Sierra, and we do probably already have airport chart here. Yes, so we are parked up here at Foxtrot 6 for runway 24. It's going to be out here, probably Bravo all the way around to get to a threshold of 26 via Link Sierra 7 there. And the departure today is the Bergie 1 Sierra departure. Oh, I don't have the right chart here. This isn't the right chart. Was it 1 Sierra or 1 Papa? 1 Sierra. This is not on this chart. I do not have the right chart. Hold on. Let's get the right chart up there. There, sorry. This one is the correct one. So we'll add that one to the knee board. We'll remove this one. Alright, Bergie 1 Sierra. Transition altitude is 3,000. Remain on tower frequency to pass 2,000 and contact Schiphol departure. Departures refer to chart 10-3x4 and a max 250 knots below 100 unless otherwise instructed. Bergie 1 Sierra 238 track at 4 DME from Schiphol. And what I'll do is I'll bring this up over here. EH001. Turn left 224 track. Intercept the PAM-251 radial. There it is. 251 radial at 19 DME from PAM, which is a 009, I guess, there. We turn right, intercept 329 bearing from CH, intercept RTM 355 to Bergie. So there's EH20028, and then Bergie. And Bergie is minimum of flight level 9 or 5, probably because you're passing over the arrivals at that point. Or as it is in RNAV on track 238, EH1, EH051, EH09, EH028 Bergie. That would have been easier if I'd read that part first, I guess. Alright, terrain is not much of an issue in Amsterdam. If you're at sea level, you're probably above the ground in most cases. Weather is, it looks like a beautiful day out there, and that's about it. Operational, anything on the NOTAMs. Let's just check our flight plan. We do have it here. It's incredibly hard to read, but we can try to scroll through it here. Let's see here. Extended area around. Okay. We could do it the easy way and just go NOTAM. There we go. Departure airport. Taxiway Bravo, close for certain length. Alpha, close for certain length. Alpha, Bravo, closed. Obstacles, obstacles. A380 prohibitions. There's a fair number of things going on at the airport here. Cat 6, not to do crane. Oops. Went too far. Runways. Don't see our active runway closed. SIDS. I don't see anything about our SID, so I think we're okay. Alright. In which case, I'm pretty sure we're done fueling, so let's go ahead and get this show on the road before it takes us any longer to get going here. So the one thing we got to do, of course, first, before we can do anything else, is start that APU. And then we can go ahead and prepare for pushback and departure. Here comes our tug driving through the building there. let's just see. Alright, so we can start removing services. We can get rid of the cones. And if we don't already have them, it looks like they've already closed up all the doors for us, which is good. FS2 crew did their job, closed the doors.
Hello, Captain. We're ready for pushback.
The one thing they don't like to do for some reason is move the jetway. Oh, it's just a default jetway. Oh, I didn't realize it was a default jetway. Okay, goodbye default jetway.
Locking gear.
Alright, so we just need to see that the APU is in fact running at 100%. Yes, we've got voltage there, so we can go ahead and take off the external power, remove the external power, in which case let me just make sure the brakes are on. They're not. There we go. Brakes are on. And tail left.
Departure check completed. Bypass pin inserted. Release parking brakes.
Skip old ground. Transat 361. Stand Foxtrot 6. Airbus 330 is ready for push and start.
Transat 361, push and start approved, QNH 1015.
Push and start approved. 1015. Transat 361. I think he keeps calling us Air Canada. Not trying to be rude about it, I'm just going to keep saying our call sign correctly. Alright, before start checklist. Cockpit preparation is complete. Wheel chocks are removed. Cabin signs. Oh, I did not get that on when we were done fueling. So cabin signs are on. ADIRS is nav. Fuel quantity 55 tons. Takeoff data should be set on here, and we should have it up. There it is. Takeoff data set, and barrel ref 1015 set, and set. Before start checklist, to the line complete. Below the line, windows and doors closed and
Release parking brakes.
locked. Yes. Beacon is going on, and APU bleed needs to be on as well. Thrust levers are idle, and parking brake is coming off. Before start checklist, below the line complete.
Push. All engines clear. Start at will.
Alright, and we are underway. Let me just make sure, actually this thing won't detect until we start the engine, so let's go ahead and start the engines. Starting 2. Goodbye, Schiphol.
KLM 1009, your mic volume is really low. Could you please check in on that?
Alright. And we should have the engines up here on the second display as well. And there they go. Heat's coming up. Oil pressure's coming up. And looks like we're slowly making a turn now. Yep, tailed into the alley. And looks like we got a good stable start on number 2. And it looks nice and stable starting engine 1. This is why you have 2 people up front too, so you can do 2 things at the same time. You can watch a pushback, monitor, make sure it's going well, and also be monitoring the engine start. And hopefully one person is doing each job and not not both people doing the same job. Alright, we definitely have N3 rotation. Here comes some fuel flow. The EGT is rising, the oil pressure is rising. Vibrations are all within limits. N2 is rising. Waiting for the N1 to kick in here momentarily.
Enter 5 for Tango Charlie, we arrived to 18, thank you for your control, bye-bye.
Enter 5 for Tango Charlie, thanks for flying, see you next time, bye-bye.
Alright, one tip for all of you real-world pilots out there, before you set the parking brake, always have a look out your side window. Make sure the airplane has come to a full and complete stop, as silly as that sounds. Alright, we've got good engine starts, you guys are clear to disconnect. As silly as it sounds, when they call you to set the brakes, make sure you've actually stopped moving. Often the guy who is, depending on the airline, sometimes the guy who is driving is not the guy talking on the radio, so it may look like the airplane's almost stopped when it hasn't actually stopped. It's slowing down, but it's not stopped yet. If you set that brake when the airplane is still rolling even a little bit,
Hello,
it's going to create a huge jerking stop and put a lot of stress on the nose wheel especially. It's possible to snap a nose gear or at least damage it anyways by doing that, so it's always imperative that the airplane be stopped before you set that parking brake during the pushback. Otherwise, the airplane will stop very quickly, but the tug may keep going and, as I said, damage the nose gear. So always have a look out that side window, make sure the airplane is stopped, and then set the parking brake. I've had more than one occasion where I've been asked to set the parking brake when the airplane was still in motion. And sometimes it's not very much, especially when you're in a larger aircraft and you're higher up off the ground and it's harder to see what's happening. You don't get the sense of motion for very small motion, but if you're moving even slowly, you know, moving with a 40, 50, 60-ton airplane or 100-ton airplane at a slow speed, stopping it suddenly is still going to be a lot of momentum suddenly killed off. Alright, there goes our tug. Just waiting for the OK signal and we'll get this going here.
Left is clear. Right is clear.
Alright, so we'll do the after start flow. For the captain, it's pretty easy. We just set the start switch back to normal. APU bleed off, no anti-ice required today, APU master off. Then we do the FO's flow, flaps 1. Arm the spoilers is basically the key to it, and I don't think we got the transponder on, so let's make sure the transponder's on as well. Alright, after start checklist, anti-ice is off, ECAM status checked, parking brake, APU's still on, TCAS standby, and predicted wind shear is off. And pitch and rudder trim, so we've got 4 upset and 0. And the hand signal is received, he's long gone after start, checklist is complete. Today we're going to do this properly. The one thing we should do before we go anywhere else, I'm just going to turn on the predictive wind shear so it's ready for later. Is we're going to do a quick flight control check before we leave the gate. That's not the flight control page. That's the flight control page. So we do elevators, full up, full down, neutral, ailerons full left, full right, and neutral, and the rudder, full left. So much easier to do this while you're not moving. Full right, neutral, and that's complete. And all clear on the left.
2629, you're clear to Brussels via the Touchsceens 1 Sierra departure, runway 24, initial climb flight level 60, squawk 1000.
Just gotta wait for this guy to give his read back and then we can taxi. Or not.
Lufthansa 2629 will be Touchsceens 1 Sierra, Kilo Uniform Delta Alpha Delta.
These lanes have numbers here? Probably not, right? Looks like we're going to be pointed at Alpha 16.
Initial flight level 060, squawking 1000, departure by Touchsceens 1 Sierra, Lufthansa 2629.
Lufthansa 2629, repeat correct, report fully ready.
Ground Transat 361 is ready for taxi from Alpha 16.
Transat 361, taxi holding point Sierra 7, runway 24.
Taxi Sierra 7 for 24 at Transat 361. I find it always weird. Alright, so parking brake is coming off. Clear on the left and the right, and taxi light is coming on. I always find it a little bit weird when you don't get a very explicit taxi route, especially when there's multiple options. There's an Alpha and a Bravo taxiway here. 2 parallel taxiways that both take you to this, basically the same place. I always find it very odd when they don't specify. If there's only one way to get there, if there's only one taxiway that leads you there, then okay, I kind of get that. But here, this is a confusing airport. There's a lot of taxiways, and I find it strange that they don't specify even just Alpha or Bravo. Until I guess there's a conflict, and that's when they definitely start to specify. But I find it very odd that so many of these places, it's an American thing too. In America, they very much do this. In Canada, everything is very explicit. Every taxiway is mentioned. There's no just taxi where you want. No. It's if it's a controlled airport, control is exerted very carefully. Again, it's not that a pilot can't make it there without you know, guidance from ATC, but it's more that when there's more than one possible route, especially when there's two parallel taxiways, and I'm sure there must be a system whereby one taxiway is preferred more than the other, but darn if I know what that system is. I am not familiar with Amsterdam. This is only like my 5th or 6th time flying here at all, I think. I certainly haven't figured out the logic to how their taxiways are set up, and it's fine. But it's, you know, it just seems that then you're relying on the controller to resolve the conflicts after the fact instead of being proactive and resolving the conflicts. Even just simply taxi via Bravo. You know, that would be fine. Anyways, I just find it strange, and again, I'm from Canada. Everything is so explicit in Canada. Every taxiway.
361, next right onto Alpha, please.
Okay, turn right onto Alpha, Transat 361. And exactly my point right there. I went with what I thought was logical because nobody told me anything different. So the outer taxiway leads me to where I'm going to go, so that's what I took. I'm pretty sure it's not marked as directions on here. Nope, there's nothing that says which direction you're supposed to taxi. Unless it's buried on like page 7 of the airport briefing, perhaps.
Skipper ground, Lufthansa 2629 is ready, push and start.
Lufthansa 2629, push and start approved, QNH 1015.
Now, remembering today that we are operating a heavy airplane,
Start approved, QNH
and we've got to definitely oversteer to make sure that the main gear stays on the pavement. Which we're doing fine. These taxiways, most of them are quite wide anyways, but need to consider that. Alright, now we're on Alpha. Alright, we could do a before takeoff checklist to the line. We just gotta push this takeoff config button here. Alright, there we go. Before takeoff checklist to the line. Flight controls are already checked. Flight instruments also checked. Takeoff briefing is confirmed. Flaps. We've got config 1 plus F. And the next one's the long one, of course. V1 VR V2 flex temp. V1 is 144, VR is 144, V2 is 151, and the flex temp is 46 degrees. ATC is set, and the ECAM memo is takeoff, no blue. The before takeoff checklist to the line is complete. And away we go.
Delta 45 Papa. Delta Lufthansa 45 Papa.
Lufthansa 45 Papa, repack correct, report fully ready.
Roger, Lufthansa 45
Alright, so Sierra 7's right at the corner pretty much. Yeah, so instead of making the right turn on the corner, we make the left turn that takes us into the runway. Another airplane, little mini Airbus there parked, Lufthansa mini Airbus. It's a very nice scenery though. Flight Tampa has, yet again, done an excellent job. Feels really good here, like, so well detailed. So that's Sierra 7 right there.
Air Transat 361, no further ATC, monitor Unicom 122.8, have a nice flight.
Over to Unicom 122.8 at Transat 361, thank you, have a good day. Oh, and now it's just starting to rain here. Oh, and it stopped again, just as quickly as it started. Thanks, Octave Sky. Just a little rain shower blowing through. Alright, over to Unicom. And I think we're ready. We got the cabin crew signal ready. Cabin crew seats for departure. Schiphol traffic, Transat 361 is taking position runway 24 for departure, Bergen 1 Sierra departure. Alright, and before takeoff checklist as the strobes as well. That's the one I'm forgetting here for some reason. Alright, below the line is cabin crew is advised TCAS is going to TARA. Engine mode selector is normal, and packs 1 and 2 are on. Before takeoff checklist below the line is complete. Well, I just brought that to a crawl, didn't I? As we try to figure out the lineup of this giant jet on this runway here. Here we go. I think we got it more or less there. So we got the landing lights on there. We're just going to pop this out for me to use. And I think we're ready to go. And the one thing I was going to look at and I forgot to look at, just to make sure we are, current status, yeah, we are flying because it says end flight, so it's ready to go. Alright. Alright, takeoff, check thrust. Skip all traffic, Transat 361 rolling departure, runway 24.
Skip all traffic, KLM 1073 established ILS pointing at 1 mile.
100 knots. Oh, she's a heavy beast, doesn't want to accelerate. V1 rotate. Positive rate, gear up. It's a bit bumpy out here today. Got nav. There's 1,500 feet. There's climb power. I'm going to go ahead and say autopilot on. Let the autopilot do the work from here on out. And flaps up.
After on traffic on final ILS 18 right, KLM 1073.
That's couple traffic. Transat 361 is airborne through 2,000 feet on the Berkey 1 Sierra departure off runway 24. That's about it for traffic calls, I think, around there for now. And there we go. Let's go ahead and do the after takeoff checklist. Temperature check. It should be pretty warm out here. Yeah, it's 24 degrees to the tat right now, so we're good. After takeoff checklist to the line. Landing gear is up. Flaps are retracted and packs are on. And the one other thing I need to do as well is disarm those speed brakes. Normally the FO would do that as they are retracting the flaps, but I'm not a very good FO, to be honest. I'm so used to FS2 crew doing so many of these things for me that I forget them so easily now. Alright, so I can see that QNH is flashing at me. Yes, we transition to 3,000 feet, so we'll go ahead and transition set standard. There we go. And our top altitude in this climb is 6,000. However, there's no ATC online, so we're just going to start climbing to our cruise altitude of flight level 360 until somebody tells us something different out there. And there we go. So we can go ahead and shut that down, and we are on our way back to Toronto, guys. Hooray! We got that done. Not too long of an order. Definitely takes a little while longer to get this big beast loaded up here. Now we're turning northbound and leaving the coastline of the Netherlands behind us. Quickly we'll cross over England, Great Britain, and then we'll be off into the North Atlantic. So, as always, we're probably going to be sticking around for the first little part here, just until we're sure there's no ATC online, and then for the Atlantic part, we're probably going to have to step away from the flight deck, because again, I can't talk for 7.5 hours straight, so we will just carry on from where we are there. Now, I've turned down, one thing I did do is I turned down the sound of the sim a little bit overall. I hope it's still audible, but quiet enough that you can hear me. I noticed I was paying attention to the video that I had made, and it seemed like the sim was a little bit louder than I liked it, just a little bit, especially the external shots. Now, one thing is this airplane really quiet in the flight deck, quite loud in the external shots. So I kind of cut that back so that it wouldn't be quite so loud and obnoxious. I hope that's the case anyways. That was my goal. Got a couple of cloud layers up here. It's not quite as clear as it was last time, but it's still not that much of an issue. A few on and off rain showers, but we're still dealing with a true air temperature here of 16. I'm going to go ahead and put this into the cruise mode there. Here comes 10,000. So we're going to go ahead and turn the lights off. But we are not going to turn the seatbelts off yet, because this looks like this cloud layer could be a little rough as we climb through here. So we'll let it climb up through here, and then we'll turn the seatbelt sign off once we get through that. Probably be okay with the cabin crew getting up and going. If there's a button to make it just chime specifically, you can always just call the cabin crew anyways. Alright, so now that we're above 10,000, I'm just going to have a quick look here at my V pilot and see who we've got online. We do have some Oceanic control online. I've got just a generic London Center, Manchester Center, lots of different centers online today. Not sure who I'm going to have to call, if anybody. Let me just see if my VATSPY helps me out a little bit. And the one thing I did actually find the other day was there is a useful website there, which is good. Yeah, London Center, Man Center. That I found that the VATSIM.uk site actually has a really good guide for anybody who's never seen it, and I hadn't seen it. This is news to me. Useful. But news to me, I had never seen this VATSIM. Sorry, this VATUK. Oh, where is it? There it is. But it's really good because so here's where the various sectors are. Now, of course, there's the two guys that are online right now don't match these at all. There's one generic London Center with no other letter. And then there's also a Manchester Center as well. So sector standard frequencies, London. So he should, in theory, cover everything, I think. So probably as we make this turn up here at Bergy, if I pull up my live map here, and you guys can see that as we make the turn here at, where are we here? So we're here, we're going to make the turn at Bergy. It's somewhere around Mimva, so shortly after we make that turn, that we would have to, that we're definitely into the London control airspace. Whether or not that controller is going to control us is a whole different story, but that's when we enter that airspace. So we'll give him a call very shortly here. We'll make this turn up here at Bergie, and I'll give him a call. Looks like we're just about above all the clouds now. Oop, that's not what I meant to do. That's what I meant to do. Just going to hook around this cloud. There's still a few out here, so we'll leave the seatbelts on for just a little bit longer. Just to make sure where everybody's okay, everything's hunky-dory. And then we'll go ahead and call London. So this is definitely a much more normal time. So I did basically the same time of day for the trip to Amsterdam. That was not at all realistic, but this is a pretty realistic time frame for this flight, I think. I don't know the exact schedule of Transat 361, but normally most westbound flights leave Europe kind of in the early afternoon, maybe even late morning to early afternoon, and arrive in North America in the afternoon to early evening hours, and that's definitely what this one is doing today. So this is a fairly realistic schedule. It's usually daytime when you head west. It's eastbound, it's more of a nighttime thing, and that's partly due. Airlines have sort of scheduled themselves to a way that works. The way with jet lag being as much of an issue as it is, it's easier to kind of, especially when you're going eastbound and your days are shrinking, to sleep off the travel period. Wake up and feel like it's a new day. It's easy for your day to get longer. It's very tough on the human body for the day to get shorter. You can extend your day quite a bit, quite easily. The human body doesn't mind it, but trying to make it shorter, trying to get up earlier and having the sunlight pop in earlier every day, it's very tough on the human body. Alright, so let's see if this London Center cares at all about us. 2782.
Bye-bye.
Every team come 122, estimate, thanks, bye-bye, 821 Yankee.
London Control, good afternoon. Transat 361, flight level 219er, climbing flight level 360, departed Amsterdam a few minutes ago.
Transat 361, good afternoon. London Control, climb flight level 360.
Climb flight level 360, Transat 361, thank you. I guess that answers the question. I guess he is a controller for us today.
Can you just come?
Because he didn't tell us to get lost, that must mean we're in the right place. Alright, I would say that we're probably good to take off those seatbelts now.
You can remain on that heading. In fact, I'll make it further left, please, heading 165.
And we're doing quite well here. Climbing out, let's see here, Mimva, so can't even see the level off point quite yet, but it's coming up slowly. There it is. It's just going to be just before Lagros, so about 80 miles. 80 miles till we level off. And then just keep on trucking. I do believe we have a step climb in our flight plan, though. Let's see here. Let's have a quick look at the flight plan here. And don't know how well you guys can read this there, but we are supposed to have, so for the crossing we're supposed to do 370. I'm going to keep it to 360 because I find it works better in the VATSIM environment to keep the even altitudes for a westbound flight. But then by hoist we're supposed to be up to 380, and even at Bécomo up to 400. So as we burn off this fuel, the airplane gets lighter, we can definitely climb higher. Right now, if we were to try and get to 380, it would be, that last 2,000 feet would be a real slog.
Stand by, please, runway 6 kilo X-ray, climb flight level 370. Climbing flight level 370, radar 6 kilo X-ray.
Let me see here. I'm just trying to think. There is usually a page somewhere that lists the maximum altitude that you can climb to.
Climb flight level 260.
Climb, maybe it's on the cruise page.
Can we descend in like 15 minutes or flight level 280?
Yep, so if you look at the start of the
there it is, progress. Recommended max 379, optimal 365. So the higher you go, the harder it is for the airplane to stay there, and you know, obviously with thinner air, the engines have a harder time maintaining enough thrust. So there's a theoretical limit to the climb, and then there's sort of an optimal flight. So right now 360 is the optimal, so we're pretty much climbing to our optimal flight level here. But then as you burn fuel and the airplane becomes lighter, the optimal flight level goes up throughout the flight. Shorter flights, not usually an issue, but when you're talking about an 8-hour transatlantic voyage or longer, then it'll take you a lot longer to get the... you know, you could spend an hour or two at a higher altitude after your step climb, and that can make a difference to the fuel burn. Oh, look at this. The progress page has predictive GPS. Key function and off, but that's okay. Ah. I just learned something new. It's amazing what you can still learn every time you play with this airplane. Or any airplane, really. You always are learning something new. But there we go. We are on our way. I'm going to go ahead and put VOR DMEs on here. And I'm going to go ahead and put terrain on my nav display here. And then now you can sort of see the coast of England sort of kicking in there. So we're going to head kind of west towards the coast of England, then we're going to take a right turn and head well north to get towards the NAT track that we're looking for, because it is quite far north today. Again, if I go back to my live map here, just to sort of give you the overall feel, there you go. It's a little bit hard to see, I realize that, so let me just see if I can at least kill the... I like the weather radar, I really do, but there we go. So now I don't know if you can see it that well, but here is our route. So we're crossing the English Channel here, then we make a big turn to the north, and then over Scotland, then we turn back again towards the west, and do this very northern NAT track, which you're probably going to see quite a few airplanes on it. Yes, so all these airplanes here are on my NAT track here, so you can see that the NAT tracks are very popular in VATSIM, and right now, because there's only one, everyone's trying to fly that same NAT track, so it ends up being quite busy. So we do have to keep an eye out for other airplanes as we're flying it.
Ready for our push and start, stand 7, Airbus 319.
E131 Quebec, your push and start is approved to face east, QNH is 1016.
Already, push and start approved, face east, and QNH 1016 for EC131 Quebec, thank you.
Quite a busy controller today too. There's one thing that about England especially, it doesn't really fit with my time zone normally, so you know, a lot of time when I sit down to fly it will be very late at night in England, but boy, England has a very dedicated, concentrated group of controllers and pilots, so more so than probably almost the rest of Europe. England especially, on VATSIM, has an extremely large number of controllers that are constantly cycling on and offline, and a large number of pilots. So out of all the regions in VATSIM, on a consistent day-to-day basis, it probably has one of the most realistic traffic loads, certainly. When you're on frequency, it always sounds busy. There's enough pilots flying anyways to keep all the controllers there busy. Most of the rest of the world, especially North America, it comes and it goes, and some areas end up being very busy, but England is the one area where it always sounds busy. North America, it often gets very quiet. There'll be little busy rushes, and then it'll be very quiet at a lot of those airports for a long period of time. But I think that's also just a factor of population density. A lot of people like to fly their home country, so a lot of the Brits like to fly in Britain, which is understandable, or control in Britain. But it's a large, quite dense country. So you end up with a lot of people online in that one particular area. North America, by comparison, has a very low population density. So there may be almost the same number of pilots flying, but they're flying over a continent that is, 3 or 4 times the width of England. So though there may be just as many pilots flying there, they're not as concentrated in any one area until they have like an F&O or something.
Jet 232, Monday Unicom 122-8, bye-bye.
We're getting there. Still climbing at just under 1,000 feet per minute.
Unfortunately, I'm closing very shortly as it's the next London sector, so unfortunately it will be Unicom for you, 122-8, bye-bye.
Was that for us?
122.8.
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ryanair 221, redirect now to ascend more final, runway 30, descend to altitude.
Missed the call sign there, but anyways, it's tough to listen to call signs, especially if you're chatting. And I'm trying to chat with you like I would chat with an FO, and it is a little bit distracting sometimes, but at the same time, like, you can't just sit and listen to the radio all day long. You can't just sit and stare at these instruments. Human beings need some kind of interactivity. You know, the flight deck, it used to be a very high stress environment, and now with all the automation and reliability of these airplanes, it's very easy to have a very understimulating flight, and that's a very common problem nowadays, is that there's so little happening in the flight deck, especially during cruise, that how do you keep people engaged? Blocked.
Little 8, Ryanair 6 kilos, good afternoon, bye-bye. 46 Alpha Lima, Monty Unicom, hi.
Over to Unicom, 46 Alpha Lima,
David 036, Monty Unicom, 122-8, afternoon.
122.8, thank you, bye-bye, 356.
And the EZ 13, sorry, it's EZ 453, I can't remember which one I pushed at Cardiff there.
Too many airplanes.
116, descend flight level 150, level by Kidley.
But yeah,
Okay, all other stations, I am now going to close. The other London is also going to close. So it's Unicom 122.8. Bye-bye.
Thanks for service.
Bye-bye, thank you for your service. Enjoy.
Alright, back to Unicom. Don't have to listen to that anymore. Not that I didn't want to. It's nice to listen to the chatter of ATC and know that there's other people out there. But yeah, it's funny, like, the flight deck has been designed so well now in most of these modern airplanes. It's a comfortable chairs, comfortable environment. It's usually the climate control usually is nice and warm, especially in the daytime when you get the sun beating on you through this window. You get just this nice kind of white noise in the background of engines. A very low stimulation environment. There's not lights flashing at you most of the time. There's not alarm bells going off. Very conducive to having a nap. It really is, and even if you don't want to, it's just you're just sitting there in the sun with nothing else to do. So it's so important to find things to do to occupy your brain. Things like talking to your FO, trying to find anything to talk about, so that you guys. I don't want the tray out. I don't like the tray out. Go away, tray. Anything to try and keep your brain moving and occupied. You know, there's always a debate about whether reading on the flight deck is a good idea or not, and I understand both sides of the debate. I tend to lean towards within reason. I think it's okay because it helps keep the brain a little bit more engaged in general. You know, if the alternative between is reading or napping, you know, letting a guy pick up a magazine to page through it to try and you know, keep his brain engaged, it's not a bad thing. The worst thing you can do is sit here with nothing to do, and especially on an 8-hour flight across the Atlantic. Like, that's a long time to be stuck in this airplane, with really very low workload for most of the middle portion of it here. You know, we've just leveled off in cruise. That's pretty much the most exciting thing that's going to happen now for the next, how many hours? Hold on. Where is it here? Top of descent, 1928 Zulu. That is 6 hours and 45 minutes from now. Top of descent in 6 hours and 45 minutes. So other than that, it's going to be just to talk to ATC. There's no ATC on VATSIM right now. Once you get in the Atlantic especially, there's only position reports about every 40 minutes, and then in between that, nothing much happens on the flight deck. So to me, this is probably one of the biggest reasons why the single pilot airliner is a lot farther away than a lot of people would want to admit. Technologically, it's quite possible. Though I will also say this, that the automation in a lot of these airplanes does not work as well as it should. Autopilots often, even in the Airbus, and the the most advanced autopilots are all still pretty dumb machines at the end of the day. They just fly. They're just constantly trying to trying to hold an altitude, trying to hold a speed, with very little forward thinking and forward prediction. And this is where, again, the pilots come in and they can help make an operation much more efficient and much smoother by looking ahead. You know, I've seen autopilots that, like, you know, because there's a speed adjustment coming up, then they want to increase speed, and they'll actually add power. Even though they're in the middle of a descent, they'll go to full power for 3 seconds to try and reach the speed as quickly as possible, whereas you could just sort of let the airplane build up speed without putting in nearly the amount of engine thrust. It will just take 10, 20 seconds longer to get there. But the automation in these airplanes is good, but it's not great. There's still a lot of micromanagement that you don't realize often happens in these airplanes. That begets having a human pilot at the controls. And then there's the human factor of having somebody to keep you awake. I think this is probably the biggest problem with the idea behind a single pilot airliner, is if you take away the one other person that is allowed to talk to the pilot, then all of a sudden you've got one pilot sitting in an airplane by himself, trying to keep himself awake with no other stimulation whatsoever. You know, this is a very understimulating environment nowadays. There's not much happening. You know, if everything's going according to plan, if there's no emergencies, it's a very quiet environment in cruise. Of course, when something happens, you absolutely want people paying attention. But try and keep people engaged when nothing much is happening, and it's very challenging. So that's why having a second pilot there is so critical. And they say, yes, well, you're going to have like a second co-pilot. There's going to be like a kind of a dispatcher second co-pilot. He's going to be monitoring from a remote location, like 10 different flights. Well, that's great. You know, and if there's an emergency, great, he's on the ball. He can help with whoever has the emergency. But how's he going to keep each pilot in all of those 10 airplanes awake? Because that is, you know, it's an unspoken rule, an unspoken duty of every co-pilot, is to try and help keep their captain awake, and vice versa. And the captain also tries to keep the FO awake. But you know, like there's that human interaction and the ability to say, hey, the guy's nodding off. Let's find something to chat about or whatever. You know, somebody who's monitoring 10 or 20 flights remotely is not going to have the time to engage in the kind of small talk that's probably going to keep these guys stimulated. Certainly not 10 or 20 guys on a continual basis trying to small talk all these guys at the same time. It doesn't work. So it's funny, but the limitations to you know, a single pilot airliner are not so much technological as they are just simply the human factor. When you only have one person sitting in a room trying to do a job for hours and hours, where he basically has to just watch and make sure nothing goes wrong, that's a tough job to do. It's easy to have a job where you're actively doing things, where you're pushing buttons and switches and doing things all the time. It's very tough to have a job where your job is just to monitor everything and only do something if something goes wrong. But if everything's going right, you're going to do nothing for the next 6 hours. That's a horrible job. And it's just human nature. We need stimulation. We don't want too much, but we need some stimulation, or the brain just simply shuts off and stops reacting to anything. It just basically it will go to sleep, whether you want it to or not. That's human. That's a human being. That's a human reaction. So, as much as the airlines would love to say, hey, we're going to have single pilot airliners in the next couple of years. Now, there's not such a concern with a surplus of pilot, or with a shortage of pilots anymore. Now there's a bit of a surplus again, but yeah, it's a lot further over the horizon than a lot of people think. The technology exists in a lot of cases, but the human factor is not ready for it. Human beings are not ready for flying airplanes by themselves, trying to keep themselves occupied and engaged for that. So someone just asked if this is TrackIR or VR. This is TrackIR. I don't have any VR equipment. It's just TrackIR. I find it's a very useful tool. It took me a little while, for the first little while, to kind of get used to it, but to me it's so second nature now. I just turn my head just a little bit, just enough. I can move my head around and I can see things. It's not perfect. Occasionally it gets a little jumpy, but overall I've gotten very used to TrackIR now. I really like it. I think it's a very useful tool. It really adds the immersion because I can just sort of look around the flight deck with my head. I don't even have to use a hand to look around the flight deck. Very useful tool. I had no idea. It's another one of those things that, like, I take it for granted now. It was a gift from someone who upgraded to a VR helmet and didn't need it anymore. And it was one of those things I always looked at for a long time and said, hey, you know, that looks like a really neat idea, but I don't know how well it would work. And it's one of those things that, like, I think, had I seen it demonstrated early on, I probably would have been like, yeah, that is incredibly useful. I could really use that. But, yeah, it's one of those things that, like, I couldn't imagine simming without it at this point. It's become so second nature to me to look around. And there are, like, Chase Plane is a good tool for trying to look around the flight deck, but you still have to have a few key presses. I used to have a gamepad actually hooked up to my sim that pretty much, but before I had the rudder pedals, I had this gamepad hooked up to my sim. It served as my rudder, but it also, I used all the different buttons on it for different view mappings, which was great. Before I had TrackIR, that was really helpful, so I could really quickly jump from this view to this view to this view very quickly, just by pressing one button, not even having to scroll through like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 views to get where you need to be. Literally, you'd press whatever button, it would take you directly to that view. I kind of want that back. As nice as it is to have TrackIR, sometimes it is nice to just be able to really quickly jump to certain views as well. I've got a few of my most common ones very closely programmed, but I'm just looking at us here, and we are doing like a pretty low Mach number today. 806 it's got us planned at here. I'm wondering if we can throw this up a little bit, so let's have a quick look at some stuff here. So first of all, the biggest problem with accelerating, of course, is burning off extra fuel. I'm just trying to make myself so I can see this here. Alright, so we need about 4.3 and 2.3, that's about 6.6 fuel when we get to Toronto. Right now we're showing 12.3. So I could probably bump this cost index up to like 100 and not make a huge difference on this. Start rolling our arrival time back from 1945. What if we were to even do 500? That only takes under 4 minutes off. Doesn't really make too much of a difference to the fuel on board, so we might as well go a little faster and try and finish this flight a little earlier than what's kind of planned in there. Let's do one more boost here. Let's do 750 for a cost index. I tell you, if the chief pilot ever saw me doing this, I'd have to step into his office for a little chat, no doubt. But since fuel is essentially free in the sim, I'm showing you, you know, you want to manage it carefully. But it's really making not a whole heck of a lot of difference here at the end of the day. We'll bump that up and just finish this flight just a few minutes sooner. It's a long enough flight as it is. It's going to be a good solid 8-hour flight. One thing I haven't done yet either while we're up here in cruise is I haven't put in any of the winds yet. So let's go ahead and let's put in the wind. One thing I would love it is if Aerosoft would allow for wind uplinks. That would be great. Because PMDG does that, and I'm not trying to say, hey, PMDG does it, but it's really good though, because putting in the winds for a long flight plan like this that covers 3,000 miles and has 30 legs on it, it's a tedious process to do those winds one leg at a time. So you know, the fact that PMDG create a format where you can have the winds downloaded, so SimBrief will let you do this. So you can download from SimBrief, you can download a wind package into your PMDG directory, and then you can use your FMS in your 37 or 777 or whatever and 8 cars for those winds, and it will downlink all those winds and quickly put them into the computer in a matter of, you know, 20 seconds instead of probably, if I start now, this is probably going to take me 10 minutes to do all the winds, which I should do them. It's not a very windy day, but it nevertheless will give us a much more realistic ETA for Toronto. So 1941, yeah, okay. So you know what? We're going to do it. We're going to put in the winds. In order to do this, we're going to bring up the FMS here. So we're going to go ahead and put that on pause for a second there, and we're going to pull up the FMS. And we're going to pull it up here because the reason I'm using the other input there is because then I can have this overlaid over my sim so I can actually see the winds at each location. There we go. Alright, so Lisbo. Oddneck is our next point here. And we're at 360. Sure. So, Oddneck. Nope. Oddneck. Wind data. That's why. Okay. Alright, so that's how we do it. So for Oddneck, we're looking at 360, 236 at 113. So we're going to type it in here. 236 at, oops, somehow I put a space in there, at 113 at 360. And then that's going to hopefully, wow, like that added a lot of wind. Fortunately, that wind is going to shift because that's such a high headwind component, especially as we turn westbound. Basically, what it's done now is it's copied that wind for all the remaining waypoints. So we're going to change it for any waypoint where it's different. So Urquhart is, let's see here, 234 at 118. And then TLA, 231 at 93. So the wind is going to drop off. So we're crossing through the jet stream right now, but then as we take our North Atlantic track, we're going to avoid it. TLA, 231 at 93. And then next, AMLAD. I keep doing it the wrong side here. AMLAD. Oh, 226 at 30. Wow. Look at that. From TLA to AMLAD, it goes, the wind speed drops by 60 knots. At 226 at 39. That's going to make a big difference now to our arrival time in Toronto. That cut it back to 2050. And as we start putting in more of these waypoints, it's going to get better, hopefully, here. Sunot. 230 at 16. We're just trying to stay out of that headwind. The prevailing wind in the northern half of the northern hemisphere here is always out of the west. So we want to get out of that prevailing headwind as much as possible. And then 58 north, 20 west, 199 at 4. .199 at 4. It's almost calm there. Doldrums territory here. 5830. It's going to be... we don't have the correct altitude, but we'll say 176 at 14 anyways. It'll be close enough for this calculation. 176 at 14. 40 west, it's going to be 193 at 18. 193 at 18. It's pretty much straight out of the south, more or less a straight crosswind, so not impacting our progress too much. By 50 west, it's 186 at 13. 186 at 13. Tedious as this is, it's important because on a long flight like this, it makes a huge difference. You saw the initial wind there put in, made an hour difference to our arrival into Toronto. So we got 50, and then after that hoist, 305 at 22. Oops. What am I doing here? Hoist, 305 at 22 at 380. Oops. 305 at 22 at 380. So we're going to go ahead and put that in there. And then at Baie-Comeau, we're going to climb to 400 at that point, 306 at 96. Step altitudes, huh? Interesting. I never even noticed that there. Alright, so, sorry. Baie-Comeau, 306 at 102. Now we'll do 306 at 102. So once again, we're going to be into a huge wind there. It's going to be mostly a crosswind, but it is going to take away some of our performance anyways. And then after Baie-Comeau, ML. Is ML Shabu? I guess it is. Anyways, ML. 400 is going to be 309 at 79. 309 at 79 at 400. And then now we're almost there. So now it's Dyson, 309 at 52. And now we're almost there. Libba is a very small adjustment, but we might as well put it in there since we're doing this. 308 at 28. 308 at 28. Let me just make sure. 308 at 28. There we go. Didn't look right before. And then the next one, Kaisik, 304 at 20. Kaisik, 304 at 20, and then finally, when we start the star LETAC, 279 at 8. Last one, 279 at 8. At 8. Alright, so now, we're back to pretty close to where we were before in Toronto. 1949 Zulu arrival with all of the winds inputted, so that's a pretty realistic arrival time now. Still 11.6, and we only need 6 and change, so we're still bringing almost 6 tons of extra fuel. So definitely we can have the cost index ramped up here to a higher number, and it's not making a big difference to our bottom line. We're still going to have more than enough fuel to get there and still have our IFR minimums. So there we go. I can go ahead and kill that FMS because it's not really doing anything anymore, but there we go. So on we go. Just made our turn here. We're sort of passing through Scotland. We're going to make a little bit more of a turn when we get to TLA. I'm curious, what is TLA? Keep saying it. What is the name of this VOR here? TLA. Slowly learning things here. The Tala VOR. TLA. Tala. So you can see pretty much from one side of Scotland to the other now. There's the east coast, there's the west coast. It's not a particularly wide country. I'm sure it felt that way to some of the early settlers when it took days and days to get just across, you know, the 100 miles or so from one side to the other. It probably felt like it was a huge country, and now it's funny, you look at it on a map and people thought it was so big at the time, and my, how the world has shrunk as the speeds have increased. As things get faster and faster, the world feels smaller and smaller. Alright, so where are we here? There we are. So Tala, we make a left turn. Looks like there's a couple of other airplanes that are heading down this same track here, heading to Amlad, Sunat, and then because my flight plan that I've filed just is, I filed it as a NAT route, it doesn't have the intermediate waypoints. Sim Toolkit Pro doesn't load the intermediate waypoints, so it goes straight from the start of my NAT Alpha at Sunat straight to the endpoint at Hoist. No points in between, so that's why it yes. That's why it sort of doesn't match what I've drawn here. It's just drawing a straight line across there. But these guys are all on that NAT Alpha. It just makes a slow arc up to the north and then back down again. ML is not Shibu, is it? What is ML? That's the other one I'm trying to remember now. MT, I think, is Shibu, isn't it? ML. Charlevoix. That's what it is. Charlevoix. Shibu is a little bit closer, more northern Quebec there. So that's it. Away we go. We do have some Oceanic control today. So we are going to have to look at making sure we're around in time to call for our clearance. Let's see, what time's our entry at here? So, Sunat at 14:16. So usually 20 to 30 minutes before that point is when we have to call for our clearance. So let's see what else we can talk about here. I feel like there was something that came up that I wanted to chat about. One thing that did come up, actually, is a little bit sim-related, and it's a little bit disappointing. But the end of the Mad Dog is nigh. Delta Airlines has announced the final dates for flying the MD-80, or the MD-90, I guess, really. I think they've retired even all their MD-88, so I think we're up to the MD-90. But the last days their MD-90s will fly, and those will be less than 3 weeks from now. I believe June 3rd. I think June 2nd is the last revenue flight, and June 3rd they're planning to bring the last of them from Atlanta out to the boneyard in the desert in, I think it's New Mexico or is it Arizona? And that will be it. That will be the end of an era, the end of the Mad Dogs. More almost than American, I think Delta was the ultimate Mad Dog operator. Operated hundreds of these airplanes over the years, and paid for them decades ago. So they've basically been free airplanes. They've been fuel hogs for a very long time. They're an old airplane design. They really are. You know, the youngest of their MD-90s are 20 plus years old. But because they've been paid for so long, it doesn't cost as much to operate them. You're not paying for a lease. You're not paying. You're not making those payments on it. So even though it does cost a lot of fuel to run them, they've kept on running them because the airplanes were paid for. The airplanes were free. It was just simply a matter of keeping them operating, keeping fuel in the tanks. Certainly anyone who's ever watched an MD-80 or an MD-90 or any part of that Mad Dog family take off, the black smoke that comes out behind it speaks to a much earlier era of aviation where pollution controls were pretty much non-existent. I still will always remember one time when we were leaving Toronto, and we were like about third in line for takeoff, and this Mad Dog lines up, cleared for takeoff. He just rolls it up to full power, and just this line. You just saw this line of black smoke just shooting out behind the engines as they're rolling down the runway, and the tower clears the next guy to line up, and he just says, "Okay, cleared to line up." Get a little cough on frequency there, and just a whole bunch of guys just started cracking up right there and then, because it was so right. Like, you just, like, the guys in the Mad Dog never really see it too much unless they're looking at the guy in front of them, but they leave the trail of smoke behind them. But boy, anybody following a Mad Dog, you know, they know the kind of smoke that thing spews out. Certainly makes you wonder about the pollution levels around the Atlanta airport, where Delta's been operating hundreds of these things for years and years and years now, and how much extra pollution is around that airport from all those Mad Dogs still flying. But sadly, the end of the line has come for the Mad Dogs. I think there is one other minor operator left of the Mad Dogs, and I can't even remember. I think it was maybe a Turkish airline or something like that has, I think, 6 of them left. But when Delta retires their fleet, that will basically more or less be the end of the Mad Dogs, certainly in North America. American retired their last ones, was it last year? I think it was last year they retired their last Mad Dogs, and now Delta's following suit. There simply is no demand for seats anyways. They don't need that many airplanes flying right now, so these older airplanes that are not particularly efficient, certainly they were workhorses, and the guys that flew them loved them. But from a company perspective, not very efficient. They go through a lot of fuel. They've probably become quite maintenance intensive as the years have gone by. Sadly, Delta has decided to pull the plug. So in another less than 3 weeks, the last Mad Dog will have thundered off into the sky and off into the sunset towards the western deserts of America, where they will slowly be taken apart and hopefully recycled, some of their parts at least, into good use in other airplanes, although a lot of their parts are pretty old school. But the Mad Dog will live on for a lot longer within the sim. Leonardo just released they just released an update to their Mad Dog that is now compatible with prepared version 5 for a small upgrade fee for those of you version 4 users. The 64-bit users, I believe it's €15. For the 32-bit users who paid less in the beginning, I believe now it's a €38 upgrade or something like that. So you guys will be paying a little bit more to get your hands on it. It looks really, really slick in the new sim, though. From what I've seen in the videos and screenshots and whatnot, it looks really slick. Haven't done it myself. I do fly it though in this sim. It's a bit of a shame now because there's not too many. I won't have too many chances to fly it in my pilot's life career now that they're terminating it. I don't know how often the pilot's life schedules and airline information are updated though, and I feel like it's not particularly regularly. I feel like it's an annual basis, if even that. So probably for at least a while longer, it's certainly going to be listed on a pilot's life, and there's nothing that precludes me from doing it even if it's not listed. So they, on their job market page, it lists all the airlines, it lists the fleets for every airline. That being said, this software is very good. It doesn't constrain you. You don't have to fly any of the particular airplanes that are in the fleet. You don't even have to fly an airplane that has the right paint scheme. This software will not track it. All it does is track just the beginning and the end of your flight. As long as you start and finish properly, that's all it really tracks. So you could fly with the wrong airplanes. I could have flown these flights with a 777 with Air Canada colors, and certainly a pilot's life would not have known the difference. It would have logged the time, but that takes away from it to me. Like, it sort of defeats the whole purpose. The whole point is to work for this airline. So if you're not doing things realistically for this airline, if you're not flying the types that they flew, if you can't find the right paint jobs to sort of match what the airline that you're supposedly working for, then it kind of defeats the purpose of even bothering with the flying. The scheduling is still nice, but it just sort of, it seems a little bit counterintuitive, a little bit pointless perhaps to me. Anyways, so I've done my best to really kind of stick to it hard and then say, yep, I'm going to make sure that I have the right airplanes, the right paint jobs, fly realistic airplanes that these operators have flown. That being said, I do like the Mad Dog a lot, so at some point I think I would like to fly for Delta in this pilot's life career, because one thing you can say about Delta, they never met an aircraft type they did not like. Pretty much almost every aircraft type out there, every airliner out there, they have operated at some point, and still do for the most part, although now with this current crisis, they are really cutting back on their fleet variety. I believe they're retiring their 777s. They're retiring the Mad Dogs, we know that for sure, and I believe there was a wide body that they're retiring, and I think it was the 777. They're retiring all the 777s out of their fleet. I'm not sure what they're operating in its place. I know they've retired their 747s quite a while ago. Maybe they're doing 350s and Dreamliners. Maybe it's A330s. I honestly don't know what other wide bodies they're operating to replace the 777. But that's one thing about Delta, and it's a bit of a nightmare from an airline standpoint, is that over the years they've inherited so many different types of airplanes from mergers with so many different airlines, and they were never quick to get rid of them. As long as the airplanes were still functional, they just say, okay, we'll just keep operating them. So Delta ended up with probably the most varied fleet of all the major airlines around the world. Generally, most airlines, they sort of pick a couple of types and stick with it. They might have a couple of wide body types, 1 or 2 wide body types, and 1 or 2 narrow body types, and sort of stick with what they've got there. But Delta pretty much operated it all, and for the last 5 or 10 years, simultaneously operated it all. Now with the current crisis and the surplus of airplanes, they're looking through their fleet, and I think they're really saying, hey, what can we get rid of? What can we do to sort of simplify? Because the trouble with operating a fleet of so many different airplanes is it takes a lot of effort. There's a lot of duplication of effort. You have a lot of different. You need to have pilots trained on each type of airplane, and generally pilots are only going to be trained on one type of airplane, so you don't have as much flexibility shifting pilots between different airplanes. Maintenance is a bit more of a headache because you've got to maintain different stockpiles of parts for all your different airplanes. Ditto for even operating procedures and manuals. Every airplane's a little bit different, so you've got to maintain a set of operating procedures and manuals for each type of airplane. So the more types of airplanes you have, it becomes very complex. That's where airlines like Southwest thrived, because they were single type airplanes. Every pilot in that company can fly every airplane the company owns. So that, it's just less restricted from the operation. If there's a pilot who's sitting at home and there's a seat that needs to be filled, you call him up and you call him in, because that's it. You don't have to check and make sure he's certified on the type or anything like that. Everybody's certified on all the types, all the airplanes, because there's only one type. So from an airline's perspective, very simple. All the mechanics know how to work on all the airplanes because they're all one type of airplane. Of course, you lose the flexibility of having smaller and larger airplanes in that case. It's a sacrifice that Southwest made a long time ago, and they're happy with, and they've run with it. But Delta was pretty much the polar opposite in terms of fleet variety. Every single airplane was in the Delta fleet at one point, and now they're slowly being phased out, and Delta's starting to make it a little bit more normal. But that's why I think Delta would be a fun airline to fly for in a pilot's life, is because they've had every airline type. And if I do fly for Delta, I will still fly the Mad Dog, even though it's not currently flying for Delta, and probably the 777 as well. Even though those airplanes are not currently flying for Delta, I will fly them, because I think they're great airplanes, and I want to fly them. And that's basically what it comes to. Anyways, here goes Tala, so we're slowly making our way towards the Oceanic airspace. So I think it's about time for me to take my first step away from the flight deck, guys. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys are enjoying this stream. I'm certainly enjoying this adventure. The subtitle to A Pilot's Life. It's time for a new adventure. I'm enjoying this adventure. It's different. It's different from what I've done in the past, but it's fun, and it's really neat to have the schedules assigned in this way, somewhat realistically. I like the way the schedules are built in this. This really is the crux of this software that makes it so appealing. Is the software, is the scheduling. So I'm really excited about finishing off this schedule and moving on to the next one. So this schedule, what we've got left still to go here is after this we do a Punta Cana turn. So Toronto down to Punta Cana, which is in the Dominican Republic. Back up, and then a Miami turn, and back up, or not a Miami turn, sorry, an Orlando turn, back to the home of the mouse, and then back, and that's going to be it. That's my schedule for this month. But I can't wait to generate another one, because Transat has a ton of interesting destinations, places I've been to, some I haven't. So I look forward to visiting both the places I've been to and the places I haven't. But for now, we're going to step away for a little while. My mouth's getting pretty dry. I've talked for quite a while here. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all of you guys that are out there watching. And I will be back probably in about half an hour to start dealing with the Oceanic. So, check back in with us in about a half an hour, and we'll see you guys then. Alright guys, Captain App's back in the flight deck, and while we were stepped away there for a few minutes, looks like Scottish Control came online, so let's have a quick talk to him. 1 second here, let's tune him in. I believe it was 3552.
Romeo Alpha 402, speed 250 knots or less.
Maintaining 250 or less, Romeo Alpha 402.
Scottish Control, good afternoon. Transat 361, flight level 360.
Transat 361, Scottish Control, hello.
There we go. Alright, so I'm going to send a quick... Oh, never mind. Our Oceanic controller logged off. We had Oceanic control, and we lost it. So there we go. That's it for that. Oh well. Easy come, easy go. Only with Scottish control for a little while here, to be honest, though. Not the controller I was expecting. Pretty much to AMLAD.
Lufthansa cargo 8187, contact to London 133.7.
And then at AMLAD, which is in 65 miles, 68 miles, or about 9 minutes, that's it. So we're off of Scottish Control and we're into the Oceanic where nothing much is happening. So unfortunately, even though we don't have Oceanic Control today, we can request our Oceanic Clearance pretty easily when we want it. And we can do that. Let me see here if I can remember where it is. It's in here somewhere. I know it is. There it is. There's the Oceanic Clearance. However, today we don't even have to read off the waypoints. So because we are flying the actual NAT Track Track Alpha, we could just simply request... Is it Alpha or is it Zulu? I think we're flying Alpha.
402, speed 220 knots or less.
220 or less from
Alright, let's just check. We can go down here to the NAT message, if I can find it. There it is, NAT message. It is Track Alpha. Alpha is Sunot 5820, 5830, 5840, 5750, hoist. East levels nil, west levels 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, and 39. So this was the one thing that I was going to do. So our ideal altitude for the crossing is 370, which normally for a westbound flight is incorrect. Normally westbound flights are even altitudes only. However, in the North Atlantic track system, in the NAT system, the odd altitudes or the incorrect altitudes are often available because there's so many airplanes trying to fly down one track in one particular direction at the same time of day that along those tracks all the flight levels become available, certainly in the mid-30s where most people want to fly. So even though it should in theory be 34, 36, and 38, they're also offering 35, 37, and 39 today for the westbound flights. Eastbound flights cannot fly along this route at all because they would conflict with the westbound flights. But the vast majority of the traffic crossing the Atlantic this time of day would be westbound, so it would not, it wouldn't be much of an issue. The east ones would not want to come up here anyways because there's not much of a tailwind. They'd want to go down somewhere where there's more of a tailwind. So to go down and look at it, if I can get my thing to scroll nicely here, maybe we can just do this. No, I do not want to exit prepared. Jesus Christ. Yeah, so this is the westbound track Alpha. The Zulu tracks are all, the Zulu track, the eastbound track is way down here today because they want to pick up that tailwind. We want to avoid that headwind, but if you're eastbound you want to be on the tailwind. So it's usually not much of an issue because usually the eastbound and westbound tracks are pretty far apart because they very much want different things from the wind. The westbound track avoids that headwind. The eastbound track tries to find the strongest tailwind. So it's usually not much of a problem with flying the wrong way levels. That being said, on the VATSIM network, things are always a little bit different and there's always more randomness than organized flying. So better to still follow these rules even though you could. During major events, during cross the pond where there actually is active control of all of these routes, of all these cross the pond routes, then there is then they'll use all the flight levels available. They'll use 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39 for westbound, and eastbounds will just not be allowed anywhere near those tracks. But most of the time on VATSIM, because there's no control, and because there's a lot of random flying, people flying sort of not with the patterns because they fly what's convenient for their times, they will. It's much smarter to follow the altitude orders even over the Atlantic where normally they wouldn't apply. So sometimes, as much as VATSIM tries to emulate real life and try to be a copy of real life, it's not always possible. Things are different the way VATSIM works versus real life, unfortunately. So, for example, typical example would be the fact that, like at major airports where normally you would have control towers open 24/7, obviously we don't have controllers available 24/7 in the VATSIM network. People have to make do with uncontrolled procedures at airports that should normally be controlled. You know, and then there's also people could be flying different things, whether they have a different weather engine perhaps, and they don't have the same winds as other people, you know, or maybe they're flying time offset. I don't like to fly time offset. I try to fly in real time as much as possible. That's just, again, it's just me. It's the way I like to work, more than anything, because especially doing this North Atlantic stuff where you have to make position reports, and your position reports are time-based, then your time needs to be accurate. So the time in your sim needs to match the real-world time. Otherwise, it makes no sense to the controller. If I say, if it's 1346 Zulu right now, but I say, hey, my ETA for my next waypoint is 2127 Zulu, he's going to be like, your waypoint is 8 hours from now? What? So the more you try to fly, and especially if you fly these uncontrolled areas where position reports are necessary, you kind of have to fly in real time. So I like to fly real time as much as possible. I like to fly day, night. I think part of it is that it's an interesting call. Yeah, by doing certain things, like taking certain things from the real world, like the weather, like the time of day from the real world, it takes a little bit of the decision making out of sometimes getting into the sim, because sometimes getting into the sim, you spend half your day just deciding where to fly. It's another thing where a pilot's life is really nice. It gives me missions to fly. I have to fly these missions, and it's very organized, predictable. You know, so I kind of like that aspect. It takes a little bit of the decision. It takes a little bit of the decision making out of the picking where to fly, anyways, aspect, and then I just have to focus on the normal decision making that a pilot has to make. How much fuel is appropriate? What is an appropriate alternate? You know, appropriate routings, maneuvering around the weather, diverting to the alternate when necessary, those sort of things. So I do kind of like that aspect of flying, and I try to simulate that part. It's weird when you're simming because you're often playing multiple roles. You're often your own dispatcher. You know, you make your own flight plan. You call your own fuel truck. You decide when to start loading. You're always sort of wearing multiple hats in the sim. So it's kind of nice to sort of take some of those extra decisions away that you have to make and just make it easy. All right, we're just about to cross MLAD, and the next waypoint after that is Sunot, and that's where the Atlantic system technically starts. I'm not sure if this guy's going to dismiss us at MLAD or if he's going to keep us. Again, we could probably go to my VATSIM UK website. So I'm pretty sure that the Scottish control is also in here as well. Yeah, there it is. And I can't see. I just need to zoom in a little bit more on this here, but.
Thank you very much, EZ521.
AMLAD, there it is. AMLAD does definitely appear like it's going to be the boundary of Scottish control. So I expect any minute now I'm going to get a call dismissing us over to Unicom again.
Good afternoon, Ryanair 6 Juliet Charlie at flight level 34030 miles till double descent.
Ryanair 6 Juliet Charlie, roger. It's an IMPIP 1 Echo arrival.
IMPIP 1 Echo arrival, Ryanair 6 Juliet Charlie.
Scandinavian 1050, route direct to Test P.
Direct Test P for Scandinavian 1050.
Romeo Alpha 402, descend to altitude
Now,
3000.
I just wonder if he's noticing us, because we're way on the fringe of his airspace, if he's even noticed we're crossing AMLAD yet or not.
Rhino 6, Juliet Charlie.
While we're in the flight deck, I'm going to quickly do a quick little scroll through the flight deck to make sure everything's good. We still got 43 tons of fuel. Engine parameters are all green. Bleed systems all appear normal. Pressurization system, the cabin's pressurized properly.
Scandinavian 416 with you, 340.
AC power
416, Scottish Control.
and DC power both look nominal. Hydraulic systems look nominal.
Tip 1 Echo arrival.
APU's not running. Conditioning systems, again, temperatures all are looking pretty good. Doors are all open. I mean, are all closed. Doors are all green. Doors are all closed. Jeez. Wheels, good. Flight controls. Looks good. And of course, the ever complex fuel system. We have used up 12,000 kilos already, and we're at 43 right now, which brings us up to 55, which is where we started. So as of right now, no leak suspected. This Scottish Control Transat 361 just crossed AMLAD. Did you want us over to Unicom now, or do we stick with you till Sunot?
Transat 361, thanks for the call. You come on to Unicom 122.8. Bye.
Unicom 122.8, have a great day, Transat 361.
You too.
Alright, back to Unicom yet again. Now we are leaving Scotland and Ireland and Great Britain behind us, and all of Europe, and heading out into the wide open ocean. So, once again, there's no ATC online here for the Oceanic portion right now. I'm hoping that at some point somebody will log on. But based on the idea that there is not anybody in right now, we're definitely going to step away for about the next, probably almost 2 hours here. So we'll do that. So we'll go ahead and bring this up here. So we'll probably be back no later than 16:30 Zulu. Probably, hopefully a little sooner than that. Maybe we'll get some ATC and we'll be able to take it out before that. But in the meantime, guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, stick with me. We're going to continue making our way across the pond here. We hope to reach Toronto at about 19:45 Zulu-ish. And in the meantime, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will be back on the flight deck in a little bit.
messed up. We can go back. I can go back.
It's alright. You'll never be alone again. You're with me now. You're with me. I have such wonderful, wonderful things to show you.
I see those eyes in my isolation, dividing lines drawn across the gray. Feel the driving winds coming over us. Say my name before I venture to the snow. These frozen feathers are all I need to let go. To be this close, to stand so far, to see you just beneath the surface. To keep the faith alive. As I swim through frozen mercury, say my name before I venture to the snow. These frozen feathers